To be undocumented, it means to not truly be independent because you don't have a document that says you can go out there and pursue happiness.
It means not having a job, not having a housing, not having Medicaid, or not feeling safe.
It's embarrassing, you feel ashamed, and also frustration. Because you hit these barriers and you're just like, there has to be a way out of this. My family is originally from Santiago, Chile. We came here when I was a few months old, back in 1993. I'm from a small city called Glen Cove, and it's like any other suburban neighborhood, a white picket fence and a home with a small family. I began to sort of realize that something was up when I went to apply and talk to my parents about applying for a permit or a license, and we started to figure out what documents you needed in order to do so. That's when you started to realize that there were barriers that were going to just make life a little bit difficult. To be truthful, I really didn't know I was undocumented until high school. And then over time, you start applying for college. And I think that is the moment that hits you hardest. And at that point, things really began to look bleak.
Y ahí le dijimos que él no podía aplicar al colegio que él quisiera porque no tenía sus documentos de este país, o sea, no era legal aquí en este país. Para mí fue terrible, porque no tenía solución, yo no podía darle una solución a eso.
I decided to immigrate to the United States when I was 15. I was a gay boy and I was, dreaming of being a trans person. I was undocumented, and also at that time I don't have any family here. And a man that was like 40 years pushed me to do sex work. When I said no to him, he told me, if you don't do this, I'm gonna call ICE and I'm gonna deport you. So that's why it was so easy to him to push me to that situation.
From being able to pick up your child from school, to interfacing with a law enforcement officer, accessing city services, you need to proffer identification. And for vulnerable populations in particular, getting ID can be very challenging.
Sometime in 2014, we got a call from the mayor's office. The call essentially was, what do you think about giving those that are marginalized, vulnerable, undocumented immigrants in New York City an identification card? Now, initially, that sounds great.
When I saw that the NYPD was working to create the car, it was a little weird because they are arresting my community, they are oppressing my community, and they are creating the car. I was like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here.
It was a situation, it's like, why go to a meeting in which you have an important stakeholder, right, who has been the biggest purveyor of deportations of immigrant New Yorkers.
If you don't have the police department at the table talking about where to set the bar for security, then you have an idea that nobody's really going to accept. Every niche group has an agenda. If you let any one person write it through their particular agenda, you're going to get something that just works for them, and probably not even for them.
immediate concern was about creating any kind of database that could be used as a way to identify people who are undocumented. And this didn't come out of nowhere. The city of New Haven, Connecticut had an ID for several years before we did, and almost immediately upon creating their ID, somebody requested the list right off the bat, a sort of vigilante person, in order that they could identify undocumented people living in New Haven. And so we urged the city to not create any kind of database where they were storing information about applicants.
Once we saw the issue around records retention, it became clear that we had to sort of say we actually oppose this.
So this is a great place to talk about what's happening today all over the city. 17 locations like this where people are going today to apply for their municipal ID, ID NYC.
The first time we having a place here in Nectaro, I saw a huge line of people that want to take the NYC.
Y ahora necesitan 2 años.
Bueno, yo creo que esto fue un paso muy importante para la comunidad, más que nada inmigrante, que no contábamos con un ID. La policía te paraba antes, si no tenías un ID, en el momento te arrestaban. Cualquier cosa, la policía te llama porque me ha pasado, me pide el ID, le muestro el ID, más nada. Ok, te puedes ir.
Besides ID NYC giving undocumented folks here in New York City the comfort of being able to, again, report a crime to police officers or just approach government in a way they probably didn't before, ID NYC also provides all New Yorkers an opportunity to really discover their city.
And so this was 2016, and now there is a database of 1.2 million people. And yeah, we have a federal government that is not publicly antagonistic to an immigration agenda. But what happens if that changes?
A puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet. Don't worry, we're building the wall, don't worry.
And then, you know, November 9th, 2016 happened.
Donald Trump has won. It's been what they call a historic event. We cracked down on sanctuary cities.
And, you know, immediately, 2 Republican Assembly persons go and file a lawsuit to get the data.
It's very misguided to issue 1 million identification cards to individuals throughout New York City, and some have obtained those cards by using expired foreign passports. And we know that there's a black market across the world for that type of passport.
And I wanted to determine whether or not we were in fact accepting, as part of the program, forgeries in terms of passport.
And I believe by issuing ID cards and destroying all the background records, that creates a problem that it can be exploited to gain access to schools, to city buildings, and to open up bank accounts for funding terrorism. And that is, you know, we need to make sure records are intact for that reason.
What I testified to in the hearing, we had talked about data retention. At the end of the 2 years, what we didn't see was the New York City ID had become a factor in criminal activity, quite the opposite. So as a government agency, you have to ask yourself, how much of this do I need to retain, since nobody can guarantee in perpetuity the internet security of anything that holds that much personal data?
Afternoon, everyone.
IDNYC, did you miscalculate by creating this database of vulnerable people that you now don't seem to be able to get rid of?
We did not know Donald Trump would be elected president. We worked under the world we knew then. We worked very closely with NYPD to figure out a secure card, but people learn through experience. And in the course of the 3 years, that was the timeline that was set for then being able to remove those records and destroy them. We learned that we did not need to keep them as backup. So as soon as the court case is concluded, we will destroy that information, and I believe we will prevail in the court case.
As an immigrant, as a stateless person, as a refugee, and as a asylee, to be here in New York, to live as a New Yorker, is a space in which we fight for each other, means home, safety, and an identity. And now there is a database of 1.2 million people. It represents vulnerability on many different levels.
Getting the process of having the NYC give you power, because you have an ID that say your name, gender, who you are. I still recommend to take the NYC, but as an undocumented person, the most important is to destroy that information.
I've lived in the shadows for too long. I know what it's like now to give back to a community, to work in a community, to actually be a functional part of society. I think I've reached a point where there's no more room for fear. There never has been room for fear. At this point, it's sharing as many stories and reminding folks that the people who have IDNYC, the people who have DACA, the undocumented population, they're as American as any other American here in the US.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.